Hello, everyone. I am here today. My name is Ann Poirier. I'm here today with a couple of my colleagues, and we are, I guess, celebrating a little bit No Diet Day, which is coming up on May 6th. May 6th is International No Diet Day. It started back in 1992 by Mary Evans, who really just wanted to bring awareness to different body sizes and body shapes and celebrate different body sizes and different and shapes, and allow us to recognize that we are all different and that our bodies are supposed to be different sizes, and to really bring some more awareness to size discrimination, weight stigma. We know that eating disorders and disordered eating is prevalent, and that's what we're here to chat about and talk a little bit about today. So I am an intuitive eating counselor as well as a body image coach. And I am joined by Tara Whitney and Kathryn Best. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves, a little bit about them, and have them give you a little bit of information on why No Diet Day is an important piece of their education as well. So go ahead, Tara.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. My name is Tara Whitney. I'm a certified intuitive eating counselor, also a body image and body confidence coach. And I love working with entrepreneurs and business leaders who want to let go of dieting and emotional eating so they can focus their time and attention on what really matters to them. And why I think No Diet Day is so important to celebrate and to acknowledge and to educate folks around is because a lot of my clients, me and included in my own personal journey with food, I didn't really call what I was doing as dieting. In my mind, I just thought I needed to be quote unquote good around food. But yet I was spending so much time and energy trying to be good around food. And I just thought this is just the way it was. So for a long time, I didn't think it was actually called dieting. I didn't even want to put I just didn't like, it was just a foregone conclusion, really. And so when I think about what dieting is, um, what I see is that we have actual signals that our body is sharing with us. It knows when it's hungry, it knows when it's full. And what diets do is it asks us to dismiss those signals. And so anytime we are purposely and intentionally dismissing the signals that are coming from our body for weight loss purposes, I consider that a diet. And that includes restricting certain foods for other reasons than for health reasons. That includes restricting quantities of food, and that also includes restricting when you eat during certain times of the day. And it's just important to have a conversation around this because diet culture, which is the cultural beliefs that glorify and value thin bodies and elevate dieting as a way of health and in some ways like almost being a better person, diet culture actually makes dieting really normalized. So for many, many people, they are surrounded by dieters. They're surrounded by people who are talking about calories and trying to be good around food and about weight loss. So that's why I see it important to talk about No Diet Day.
That's great. Thank you, Tara. That's great. Kathryn.
Hi, yeah, my name is Kathryn Best. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I work in three places, really. I spend time for Maine Health. I work for Maine Health under Maine Medical Partners, and I work with adolescents and young adult medicine group there, working with eating disorders. I work with the Heart Foundation, which is with Dr. Kathleen Hart, and provides specialized treatment for folks with eating disorders. And then I also have my own business, which is New Meadows Counseling, and I do some private work there as well. So that's a little
Wow.
about what and the reason no diet day is so important to me is that dieting and as Tara said, any restriction of food is and can be a precursor to eating disorders and disordered eating. So I think particularly with young people, adolescents and young adults, when you see them begin to restrict and not allow themselves to eat as they would even 5 years ago, and you can see a lot of this on growth curves and their charts, it's really interesting that they're starting to, as Tara put very eloquently, right, they're not listening to their bodies, and their minds are trying to control what the body gets and doesn't get, and often that leads to a good and a bad. And we get into that cycle. So that's why no diet day is no diet ever, but diet day is particularly important and relevant to the work that I do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so well stated. Both of you, thank you for your own kind of definitions and spin on that, because I think it's important to bring to light what is a diet, and because it gets misconstrued, and has been kind of corrupted over the course of the past couple of generations, really. And as you're saying, Kathryn, our next generation, the generations that are coming up, have role models who have been immersed in diet culture from the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. So that's what they see. And so this emphasis on the size and shape of a body being right or wrong, quote unquote, that's what I think for me in the work that I do starts this kind of dieting behavior. So a behavior to restrict food or do something, whether it's exercise or other means, right, in order to change body size, weight, or shape. So there's an external outcome that they are seeking in order to fit into cultural norms, society's thin ideal kind of is that space and place. And especially now with social media being so prevalent, and as Tara said, it's all over the place. You can't really escape it. And so understanding what it presents as a diet, why people are stepping into that, continuing to step into diet culture and diet behavior, and how can we shine a light on why it is destructive and how much it can cost someone in all different types of ways. So let me ask this question so we can kind of see if we can highlight, because we have seen people in destructive dieting behavior in our work. And what kind of costs do you see, or what outcomes do you see that have hurt either a person physically, emotionally, socially, relationship wise, financially, all of those pieces? And so I'll start with you, Tara. What have you found to be kind of the cost of dieting and diet behavior?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most painful one that I notice is when I ask people how often, if you look at a given day, how much of your time in a given day are you spending thinking about food or weight loss? And the typical response is all the time.
Mm.
And when I think about, oh, wow, so let's take a whole bunch of people who are dieting and pursuing weight loss and look at all of that mind share that's going toward something completely not only ineffective for what they want, because intentional pursuit of weight loss does not result in long-term weight loss. It actually results in long-term weight gain. But yet that's not the message we're told by diet culture and diet companies and weight loss coaches. Recognizing that that mind share is a huge cost for people, but not only that, the general sense that they're failing. So imagine, wow, I'm going to do this because I want a better life, which is what weight loss companies and diet culture promises. Like this idea that you're going to be more attractive and you're going to be happier and you're going to feel more successful. I mean, those are things that everybody wants. And then engaging in this dieting, and then losing energy, time, and then just straight out self-esteem, like how you feel about yourself, because dieting is not meant to it's not meant to be a sustainable activity without mental and emotional and physical cost. And it's like the big asterisks that you just wish everyone understood before engaging in dieting, but that's not the way dieting is presented. You know, a few other pieces that I think are heartbreaking to me, which is that a lot of people who diet feel very disconnected from their loved ones, communities, and friends. So that could include things like if they're not feeling great about their body or what they just ate, then sometimes they won't engage in social activity. Sometimes they may go to certain events and kind of see people eating a certain way and say, well, I'm dieting, I can't eat like everybody else. Or you know, even maybe thinking, oh, I've got this party to go to, I'm going to spend the time and energy to bring my own food. And there's just this kind of like, it's just more effort and more disconnection that comes from it. And so those are just a couple of the things that like break my heart personally, because it just goes completely counter to what they're trying to accomplish, what dieters are trying to accomplish.
Yeah. It's that big overall ideal of what it's supposed to bring to you, right? And then all of this time and energy. Yeah, Kathryn, you have anything to add and share around that?
It's interesting. I do work with a lot of young adults and adolescents, and particularly with women. It's very mixed messaging. Oftentimes I feel like, yes, that's true. What you're saying is true, Tara. And I lost 30 pounds and now all these guys are asking me out. And or Snapchatting. And so they're like, yeah, you're right, but this feels way better than how I felt before. So then you're in a struggle with like the reality, especially for young people, right? Like specifically young adults. I'm talking, 16 to 24, where for women, physical appearance, there's even more there. I shouldn't say more pressure, but there's a lot of pressure on your physical appearance. And so, and with not a lot of life experience, it's very difficult to move someone away from all of that positive reinforcement for the disordered behavior.
Sure.
And but it's a lot of it is driven by the fitness industry. And so that's a struggle that I see a lot in younger people. And I think you can really relate to, because I think a lot of people have had moments where they've gone through a growth. I'm in school, I'm finally accepted college, and I'm finally like feeling like, a lot of people have stories where they're like, wow. And then, oops, I hope my internet is okay. Just gotta.
Yeah, a little froze spot there. So go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. No, and so I just wanted to share that because I think there is validity in that lived experience of the positive reinforcement. And I don't think, and so I like to be really careful about validating that. And that, yes, it is true that you are getting increased attention, or so-and-so's talking to you. And I bet that feels really good. And at the same time, I'll hear, yet I feel like I'm in jail because I can't go anywhere. I can't go to my friend's house and sleep over and have a pizza party, or go to the frat party and drink beer and pizza. Like, I can't do that, because I know that if I do, right, the emotional fallout around change that behavior. So it's sort of like so the word jail has come, that's been described to me, like really feeling like I'm trapped. I'm trapped by my eating and my weight and how I eat and exercise.
Yeah.
So, and I did want to add one other thing just about, I think there's a growing movement in Fitspo on Instagram, which is another sort of layer of, like, in some ways it's not about underfueling, but it's still very based on how your body looks and not how your body feels.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that, because I do think that there's a growing sort of like, it's like healthy, but it's like, you know, you're spending a lot of time in the gym and you're eating certain proteins. So it's like, and there's a lot of emphasis on eating enough, but it's also like very specific what you're eating. So it is a diet, but it's sort of portrayed as like, oh, look how much you can eat, but you have to eat these certain percentages of each category. And it's just, again, it's just sort of like a mixed message. It's like, how do people maneuver that?
You know, you bring up a really good point, and that is what really is dieting, right?
Yeah.
And I think the movement that I have seen over the past few years is this lifestyle change, right? I'm changing my lifestyle. And I ask people, especially, so I work with women who are older, right, in their 40s and 50s and even 60s and 70s, who have been struggling with body image and weight and the cost of dieting for decades, right? And saying, let's pause and say, why are we looking outside of us for the way that we should eat when we're also very different, as opposed to tuning internally to our own bodies and asking our own bodies what it really needs. So one of the examples that I use around what is a diet, and I think about this, and I think it might fit with what you're talking about, Kathryn, too, is that number one, is the way that you're eating sustainable for the rest of your life, right? If answer's yes, you know, okay. If the answer's, well, I just have to do it until, right, that kind of gives you a sign that that's a quote unquote diet. But if you were to put all foods, every single food there is in the palm of your hand, and you take out one particular food or food group in order for an external change to shift the way that your body looks, or to keep your weight in check, or to do whatever it you know, some sort of an external outcome, like I was talking about before, that frames as a diet, versus taking a particular food or food group out of your plan because it doesn't feel good in your body. That becomes a choice that you are making due to your own physical body. Like this, when I eat these foods, or if I eat this particular food, it just does not feel, I just don't feel good. I start to, you know, feel gassy, or I get a stomach ache, or I start coughing, or whatever that might be. It becomes more of a choice that I can choose to eat that food, or I can choose not to eat that food, depending on how it responds in my body. Right. So I think about, you know, a dairy kind of, sometimes there's for myself, dairy, I can eat it. I choose to eat it sometimes, and I choose not to eat it sometimes. It depends on how I feel. So this emphasis on, or this understanding of, when we talk about no diet day, allowing ourselves and everyone to notice and become aware of how much their day might be consumed with the choices that they make as meals come up, as experiences come in, as people ask you to do something, invitations roll in, somebody calls and wants you to take a walk or do something with them. So understanding, for some people, I don't think they're aware, maybe like you had said, Tara, in the beginning. And how can, you know, if I were to say to you, if someone is not sure of what a diet is, or if they're dieting and they are now aware of No Diet Day, and I say, I'd like you to become aware of this. This is No Diet Day. So I just want you to think about this for today. What would you say, Tara?
I would say try it on. Try on giving yourself permission to eat without worry of what's going to happen to your weight. And I realize how scary that can be for some people, because dieting creates a mechanism where people are really fearful of certain foods. And that's because restriction is embedded in dieting and therefore creates that fear, because of the pendulum of the more you're restricting a certain food, naturally the human it's a human mechanism to go all the way in the other direction when you do allow that other food in, because it's a restricted food. But I've said it to some clients and they felt giddy and light, like, oh my gosh, you mean I don't have to worry about this for the next month? And it's like a relief. And so some folks might be in that camp, and that could be a really telling sign that they're ready to experience more freedom around food in their life, which is what Kathryn started talking about in terms of the cost of not being able to go out with friends and have pizza or go to a party, because it's like they're trapped in jail. And the other thing I would say to them is if they're not ready to give themselves permission, then notice for one day what the conversations are that they're having around food. What is it like to go through a whole day and just notice what are the constant conversations you're having, whether it's as you're pointing out too, and not just going around food, but also what you're telling yourself around workouts, what you're telling yourself about stepping on the scale, what you're telling yourself around how your clothes fit. The purpose, as you said in the beginning, of No Diet Day is to recognize that and elevate this conversation around seeing body diversity. And diets are rooted and obviously continue because we have a very thin definition. When we glorify a thin body ideal, then it's really hard to sort of look at a bunch of diverse body sizes and say all of those different body sizes are acceptable, and I'm okay no matter what my body size is. And so, yeah, it can allow this day to sort of meet you where you are with what you're ready for around celebrating No Diet Day.
I love that. Kathryn, how about you?
I often start with having folks think about what were their favorite foods as a kid. And from there, I often use actually little kids as a great analogy for thinking about diets and feeding. And it's helpful for a little bit older population too. But you would never tell a 2-year-old that they couldn't eat certain foods. Right? Like you can't have, unless within reason, right? You're not gonna be like, well, no dairy for you, right? Unless they had an allergy.
Right.
And so you would never do that. So why are you doing that to yourself? Like why aren't you caring for yourself in the same way that you were cared for typically, right? As a baby. And that helps a lot with parents as well, who are supporting a younger person, to understand sort of nourishing the body. And it is nice to think about, because when kids are little, they are really, they're dependent on other people to feed them. So sometimes I'll ask, so if you were your own mother, what would you feed yourself? If there were no rules and no restrictions, how would you feed yourself? And that can be a helpful way of thinking about, a day without, food, like a no diet day, right? And, the other thing I would add about that too, is that I agree with what Tara says. I think sometimes, I've had people say to me, wait, I don't have to lose weight. I'm like, no, the goal of this is not to lose weight. We are not trying to lose weight right now. And they're like, oh, thank you. And you're like, and they're given the freedom, like you said, and it's like a relief, like, okay, I can table that worry. Another exercise I use often is thinking about, I have people draw their head, like a circle, it's a head. And then I say, okay, so now draw what percentage of your brain is taken up with food, weight, and exercise. And with people with severe eating disorders or disordered eating, it's 100%.
Yeah.
And that is an enormous amount of energy to be spending thinking about food, weight, and exercise.
Yeah.
Sure. And moving people away from that. So does that answer the question? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think you both hit this, and I think it's so important. And that being a really great question for people who might be listening, if they are if 95% or more of their energy is taken up in their brains about counting or calculating or worrying, or all of the different things that come in, the negative self-talk that happens, right? Or the criticism or the comparing or the judgment. There's so many little things that can take up our day. And if we can bring awareness to all of that in this one day, right? And have even, 2 or 3 people out of 100 say, wow, I realized that I spend way too much time and way too much energy thinking about this. And I'm choosing that to try something new and to try something different. And that's what we're trying to do, is just highlight, or at least bring awareness, right, to people that they may, as you said, Tara, in the beginning, they may be exhibiting diet behavior and not even knowing it, just because of our culture and just because that's what is expected and that's what we see. When you think about diet culture, like I think about the good and the bad, we've talked about the good and the bad. One of the other things I want to, and so either one of you can jump into if you think about this, but one of the other things that that comes up for me is when you're eating something, if you feel shame or guilt afterwards, right? After you eat something, that's kind of a sign of being trapped in diet culture and in kind of dieting behavior. Do you have, either of you have other like signs that I think about, how can we give people these flashing warning lights that this is diet culture, this is diet culture, this is diet culture. And we've said good and bad foods, this all or nothing thinking, shame or guilt after eating. What else do you, either of you have any?
A lot of compensatory compensation. So this idea that, and this is, I think, coming from the guilt and shame of eating the wrong thing, like, oh, I can eat this, but it means I need to change what I eat next, or go and either burn this off, or I want to eat this, but I need to work out beforehand. For years, I used to I used to go on long runs on Thanksgiving morning,
Mm,
like really like for me, like 10, 12, 14-mile runs.
mm,
And I thought like, oh, this is just me being good because I get to have a Thanksgiving where I
mm,
can eat whatever I want. And I remember as I started healing my relationship with food and practicing intuitive eating, Thanksgiving would come and I'd be like, oh, I don't have to go on these long runs anymore. And I don't have to go to bed on Thanksgiving night feeling so sick and stuffed
mhm,
because I ate all the foods that I wouldn't normally eat, but felt like I had to eat them because I could only allow myself this one day of eating those foods.
mm,
And now, for the most part, Thanksgiving, these holidays, it's just another day of eating. Like it's
mhm,
just another day of eating. And that is, and so another, kind of planting the seed of what the benefit is of this too is just that people get to move through life where food just doesn't have this front and center role anymore. So,
mm. Yeah, that's great. We'll
and
come
exercise, of course, that's the other
right.
piece.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to that because I think that's great. How about you, Catherine?
For me, it's out of control, feeling out of control.
Mm,
That's a question that I ask, like after, you mentioned the shame and the guilt, but typically the
right,
shame and the guilt comes after feeling like you're out of control,
right,
because you're not following your diet. So things
right,
are out of control.
right, right. On or off, right?
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
And it can't be, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like the definition of a binge, right? It can be, right? Like I ate too many crackers, right? Like I was only gonna have 5 and I had 10 or whatever it is. And then I feel shame, I feel guilt because in that moment I was out of control. I'm using air quotes, but
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
um, yeah, and so that for me is a big signal. And
yeah.
that's typically a question I ask a lot. How many episodes of out of control eating did you feel like you had in the past week?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great one. That's a great one. I think um, that those are all kind of signs that
Mhm.
there's something going on, justifying eating, like you were talking about. Um, the other piece that Tara was just hitting on that I would love to make sure that we hit on today is the the freeness that comes when food is just food, right?
Yeah.
That food is used for fuel, but it's also used for pleasure and celebration. And how can we develop this friendship with food? And starting with the awareness that we're trying to talk about today. But I would love to hear other things that kind of happen once this intuitive eating or this kind of release from the pendulum swing when when the body image is kind of taken out of it and we're just living our lives without this 100% of time focused on food, and there's more freedom. That's definitely part of it. What else? Catherine, let me go to you first. What else do you think, like as far as success, or have you seen some success stories, or what can we bring hope and highlight, some positiveness about what can come from not only no diet day, but no diet every day?
Right. Uh, well, I think I mentioned earlier, like feeling like you're in jail.
Mm,
And sometimes if someone can remember, like often I'll do, like, when was the last time that you remember not feeling this way about food, that you felt like free with food?
mm,
And I want you to go back there and I want you to think about how you felt in that
mm,
moment, and knowing that you can. Because I find that people feel really, when they're seeking treatment, right, it's sometimes been years of this, and like that there's no hope, right? Like this is like the way that this is the way they've been living their lives. They want to change, but it's been a long road.
mm,
And so I think knowing that you can get that back, if you
mm,
can remember those days when, like, if you can connect with how you felt on those days where you did not have the rules and the regulations around food and exercise, and you can bring yourself to that point, like that is recovery is possible.
Mm.
It
Yes.
is.
Yes.
And it's possible, but and it is sometimes, there are setbacks sometimes too.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it described with an eating disorder, sort of like, it's sort of like always there, but sometimes it comes forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and other times it's just sort of in the background. Like it's there. It's not impacting you necessarily, but it's there with you. Like somebody with an eating disorder sort of always has that piece of themselves that can think that way and that can talk that way. It's getting the skills to regulate that and not let it come to the forefront.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Tara, how about you?
Yeah, like, so two clients are kind of popping in. One was able to look at her pictures of herself after Easter and full body pictures and just be able to say, oh, that's me. And no, like, and before we had started working together, she said, oh, we just got back from our family vacation. I couldn't even look at pictures of myself. It just brought up so much. And just to be able to I know a lot of clients who might not even want a full body picture taken of them, and they're missing documenting or like beautiful life events that with family and friends, and to be able to have that level of just neutrality or even appreciation when they see a picture of themselves. And then the other benefit is I was talking with a client who was on vacation, and she was sharing what it was like to eat while being on the road and traveling to all these great places and all of this. And she just shared how there wasn't this like overeating experience because all foods were available, and she was really practicing food neutrality. And so she was able to have this experience of like ordering what she really wanted and then feeling that level of satisfaction where there, and again, with intuitive eating, although folks may not know this, like with intuitive eating, there aren't any quote unquote rules. Like you can there's a lot of reasons why folks may want to eat past physical fullness. There may be plenty of reasons, and just this desire of being able to say, you know what, I just really want to enjoy this piece of cake, and I'm, for whatever reason. So it's not like what I'm glorifying is that she didn't overeat. What I'm highlighting is that she felt so satisfied with so many of her meals, and then food wasn't this big thing during a whole vacation. And again, it's getting back to freedom, but realizing like that's such a tangible thing for people to be able to be able to spend a time where people just want to have fun and relax and like really be able to fun and relax because they're not worried about any consequences or anything that's happening with food. So
Yeah.
I wanted to share one other thing quickly, just sort of to piggyback off that. I'm thinking of a specific client, and we did a lot of work around identifying behavior patterns and realizing what was the emotional experience that this person was not aware of, that and that emotional experience and eating. So there was a lot of like anxiousness and anxiety, and he hadn't realized that it was connected to when and how he was eating. And so now that we have awareness, so sometimes I think like the awareness factor is big, because then you can start changing, thoughts, behaviors, feelings.
Yeah. Right.
And so when, and that's been a slow progress, right? Like he's realizes when this happens, when it doesn't happen. And then it's not good or bad. It's like, okay, let me think about that day. What was going on for me? And then that's the real work.
Right. Right. The connection of I think about it as connecting the dots, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And understanding the anxiety that comes and the worry and the frustration and all the other emotions that
Mhm.
come when there's pressure around food and eating and body, all of
Mhm.
it. And on the other side, and so I'm using like these two sides, right? But there's all of that kind of feeling. And then on this other side, all I feel is free and peace and joy. Like there is much less of that anxiousness, right? And the feeling of pressure around food. So
Yeah.
once we can really kind of learn that forced kind of restriction doesn't benefit us in a lot of different ways, and how moving towards a way of eating and fueling our bodies so that we can enjoy vacations and go to the beach and be okay, going to the beach and capturing those pictures and allowing ourselves to sit down at a restaurant and have, order what we want to eat rather than what we should have, right? And all of those. So I think those are great ways of kind of highlighting this healing, this hope and healing on this other side. I had a client that said to me, which I remember being so excited when she said it. She just said, I realized I couldn't hate myself thin, and to understand that it was the self-hatred and the body hatred that was holding her prisoner, as you say, Kathryn, right? She was in prison with her own, and I think about her own perspective of her body and her body size, and having to change it, thinking she had to change it in order to be free. And it had nothing to do with that connection. It was more about her perspective and allowing. So I think about this exactly what you're saying, Kathryn, is this prison in your head, but the door's wide open and you just don't realize that the door's wide open. You can step out at any time.
Well, and yes, totally. And the other piece is that, I can't, so many people I'm thinking of, right? Like, well, do you think you'd be any happier if you were 20 pounds lighter?
Mm.
No, not really.
Yeah.
Okay. So why are we putting so much energy into whatever the number is, 5, 10, 15,
Yeah.
20? Why are we putting so much energy into that? Like,
right.
Can you be okay, like, with not needing to lose weight? And like, what is that? How is that serving you? Your need to lose weight or to be a certain body shape or size. How is that really serving you?
It's putting you in the prison, basically.
It's putting you in the prison and you don't deserve to be there.
Mm.
Like what's coming up so much, I love this conversation, is like the struggles and the reason why people are dieting have nothing to do with food.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I were like such an amazing conversation from like feedback from both of your clients, Anne and Kathryn, and I would also say that kind of being able to recognize that dieters make it about food.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about food, and it's all about the number on the scale. And the opportunity is to recognize that when you're not making it about food and you're not making it about the number on the scale, then you get to do some deep level healing that's really based on like how you get to care and respect yourself. And then what the opportunity is, you get to show up in this world in like an entirely different version of yourself. Because to exactly your point, like you're no longer in this self-imposed prison. You get to go out and connect with people. You get to respect your body. You get to no longer feel like you have to fear food because you're going to be out of control around food. Like this, like, if we were to rename No Diet Day, it would be like food liberation, right? Like,
Well, and also, when you remove all of those things, like all the behaviors around it, the dieting,
Mhm.
the weighing, the measuring, and that looks measuring food, measuring yourself, and then okay, so then what's left?
mm,
Take all that away, and what would you? How would you fill your time? And I think I think about behavior, right? That's really simple, right? It's to gain something or to avoid something.
Mhm.
So that's the simplified way, right? So I sometimes will ask, like, well, what do you think you're avoiding by maybe putting so much time and energy into food and exercise and your weight?
Mm,
What is
right.
that? Are you avoiding something? Are you gaining? You feel like you're gaining control, right? That could be a feeling, but like really exploring that with people, because particularly if you're anxious, and I don't think I said this, but two-thirds of folks that are diagnosed with eating disorder also have an anxiety disorder of some kind. So that's OCD, like GAD. So they have some
Mhm.
underlying, not everyone, but a lot of the population does.
Mhm.
So is that a managing? Are you trying to control that anxiety that you're not even really aware that you have?
Mhm. Yeah. And I will say, as a eating disorder survivor, this is the way I
Yeah.
kind of just, that's how I talk about myself, is that yes, absolutely. Right. It was a controlling mechanism, and it was a way to manage emotions. It was a behavior that I was able to, nothing else mattered, because that was where my brain was all the time. Right. So I didn't have to feel anything, and I was
Mhm.
always in quote unquote control.
And you
Um,
were safe there.
yes, safe, and yet
Mhm.
and yet also not, like, um, chained, right,
Mhm.
mm,
by the rules and the regulations that I
Mhm.
had, the self-imposed pieces, and to let yourself step away and become aware, right? And I think that, like you said, Catherine, I always say awareness is a success, right? Just becoming
Yes.
aware of something, it's a huge success. And so to be aware, even after this conversation, if you're aware that, maybe I do have some dieting behavior that I didn't realize was dieting behavior, what would it be like to take a day and just notice my own thoughts, notice my own feelings, notice my own behaviors, notice the people around me, or who's talking. When you start to become aware of who's talking around you about things, around food and eating, you'll notice it's everywhere, right? One thing I want to highlight, and then I'll just let's kind of come around and say if there's one more thing that we want to share, that I think it was Business Wire just came out that dieting is actually on the decrease due to body positivity movement, body neutrality movement, and so because of that, people are stepping into more of a understanding size acceptance. So I don't, it's probably like this little much, but any kind of awareness that we can bring to the fact that we're slowly making a dent in diet culture, that can be, that's a really positive thing that we want to hold on to. And may this diet day bring more awareness to that for especially, I say especially our young people, because they're going to be our next role models, right? So if we can start with us as like, I think, generational, how can we be role models, and how can we bring up role models that are different and having a different conversation around food, weight, and body. So to finish up, let's just, what else would you like to highlight or share about just this conversation, and how we're kind of celebrating this no diet day and no diet life that we're all trying to promote? Go ahead, Tara.
mm. Well, I'll just say that I'm I'm a little skeptical of that piece of data,
I
and
know.
Honestly, just because I see wellness culture coming in really strongly, and wellness culture is very sneaky around basically offering diets that or that they say are really for lifestyle changes. I think you mentioned this before. So, for example, the Noom app,
Mhm.
straight out 100% a diet. When they market themselves, they're marketing themselves as a wellness and lifestyle change. It is
Mhm.
100% a diet. When you look at Whole30 or cleanses or intermittent fasting, all of that gets presented as, look at, where they'll literally say, we are not a diet. They are 100% a diet. And
Mhm.
so I'm
Yes.
just wondering, like, exactly how all of that got, got put together. So again, that data got put together, except for that people, again, might not are dieting and they're not realizing it, because again, people are deceiving. The diet culture and wellness culture is deceiving us around what's really happening. And so I would just say that uh, the the amazing thing to celebrate is that we have practitioners and experts who are, flooding Instagram, having really important conversations around body respect, body positivity, health at every size, intuitive eating.
Mhm.
Um, all of this is just really important to recognize that there is a growing movement out there, and it is super simple. It is live by the wisdom of your body.
Mhm.
Somehow we've been thinking, like, I know people say that's like revolutionary. It's really not. And so what we're all talking about with No Diet Day is really just getting back into the appreciation and the connection of the wisdom of our bodies, and the appreciation that without diet culture and weight stigma, we would allow our bodies to just be as it is and be able to celebrate and appreciate them. So that's, I think, just, sort of two sides of the coin with
I love that.
that there.
100%. 100%. No, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Kathryn.
Yeah, I think my last addition here is for folks listening, if you start noticing changes in behavior of family or friends,
Mhm.
any attitude, especially younger teenagers, young adults, any attitudes that indicate like weight loss dieting, that or a focus on eating or what they're eating and elimination of food groups, like that's a really good opportunity to, if you have a close relationship with them, to just get curious about it and ask about it,
Mhm.
um, and not normalize that. It's a really great chance to open up the conversation if you notice somebody that really well engaging in some of those behaviors.
Mhm.
So just really trying to bring away, again, the awareness word seems to be coming up here today, but yeah, this is No Diet Day. So when you notice somebody dieting, especially a young person in your life, ask them about it.
Mm. I love it. I love it. And if anybody's listening and wants to get in touch with any of us, I'd love to have you just share where they can find you, and how to get in touch. Go ahead, Tara. I'll start, and I'm just kind of going around in the same direction. Sorry, Kathryn. You're just-
Yeah, yeah. My website is tara-whitney.com, and I'm on Instagram at Tara H. Whitney, and happy to, yeah, connect with anyone there.
Awesome. Thank you. And Kathryn?
Oh, wait,
Oh, go.
whoops.
Wait,
I have a
what? Go ahead.
podcast.
Yeah,
I have a
that's right.
podcast, which actually folks might actually hear all of this on, which is cool.
Yeah.
Um, so my book, Hungry, Trust Your Body and Free Your Mind Around Food. And then I also have a podcast called Hungry, Trust Your Body, Free Your Mind,
Awesome.
where I'm having conversations either in just sharing information about intuitive eating and body respect, and also interviewing experts in the field and having conversations around intuitive eating.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Go ahead, Kathryn.
Find me. I'm at theheartfoundation.com or at newmeadowscounseling.com. And I'm also at Maine Health, but you have to be pediatric patient if you want to get me there. So you establish care with Maine Health, but those are the places you can find me. And I'm also on Instagram, Kathryn Best LCSW.
Okay, great.
So you can look for me there.
Awesome. Thank you. And you can look for me at shapingperspectives.com or Ann Poirier 11 on Instagram. And I think I also have a Facebook group, a private community called The Body Joyful Revolution that kind of stems from my book, The Body Joyful. And that's a place where this conversation is happening. And we're trying to just have a supportive group, of a safe supportive group for people to feel more comfortable and confident in their bodies. So I thank you both for being here and having this conversation. Just really grateful to be in the presence of professionals that are doing this work, because it's so, it's close to my heart. I know it's close to your hearts, and this is so important. So yay to No Diet Day, May 6th. Let's share the word and celebrate it. Sound good. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Ann. Thank you, Kathryn. Yeah.
Nice to meet you.